Hi kids, welcome to today's session. This is Sweta, your English Master Teacher at Vedantu, and today we are going to have the second session on the wonderful chapter from your NCERT book, that is Triumph of Surgery. So yes, in our previous session I mentioned about the the analysis of the entire chapter. I also read some of the excerpts from your book, from the lesson, so as to make absolutely clear to you the entire lesson, A Triumph of Surgery. And I also asked you to share your own stories with your pets. So many of you have come up with innovative stories and really touching ones as well. And some of you also mentioned that you miss some of your pets who are no more. So I can completely relate with you, because even I have pets in my home, and some of them are, yes, they are no more as well. So as promised, I'm going to share with you some of the pictures with some wonderful activities of my own pets. So I guess you will enjoy that, and you could relate it with your pets as well at your homes. So let's begin. Before beginning, I would like to thank all of you for making Vedantu 9th and 10th family a family of 5 lakh young minds. And yes, I would again introduce you with this one, the live online quiz, which is like never before. So you can score here, learn here, as well as earn. So what are you waiting for, guys? Just hurry up and download this app right now. So now let us begin with some of the important portions, some of the important topics that can come as your question in your exams. But before that, as promised, I'm going to share with you some of the most wonderful pictures that I had. So yes. So before I move on, before I proceed with the lesson, with the question answers important for your exam, I would again give you a slight reminder, a gentle reminder to download this app Vedantu and learn from the safety of your home, because we are committed towards helping both parents as well as students in the midst of this pandemic. So don't worry, your learning will never be interrupted. Just check out this link for further information. So as promised, you could see so many pictures I have for you. These are my pets. Out of these, I only have with me right now is this one, the mother cat. Her name is Tiger. I think most of you have already seen Tiger on live. Those who are there with me in my sessions, they have, I think, seen her. And she is also there. Her name is Beauty. But the kids are no longer there. The kittens are no longer there, unfortunately. And this is again Tiger and his brother. So he's also no more there, unfortunately. But yes, we have her and we have her Beauty. And Beauty's kid is this one. So he's also not here, unfortunately, right now. And Tiger, she is the oldest one, right? This pair, his brother and she's a sister. This pair is the oldest one, and from there we have so many of them. But the brother is no more right now, and she's there. Tiger is there. Most of you, I think, have seen. So how do you like it? Please do comment in the comment section, and I think you also could relate it with your pets, right? So now let us begin with some of the most important questions. So the first question that you need to look at is, from your text itself, what kind of a person do you think the narrator, a veterinary surgeon, is? Would you say he is tactful as well as full of common sense? Now see, when you look at this question, you have to be very intelligent when you try to solve all the questions, try to practice the questions for your exams. So see, when you are reading this question, suppose you need to answer another question which is based on the character sketch of the narrator. So there also you can take points from here. You can definitely say that the narrator was tactful and he was full of common sense. So you get 2 points out of this question itself, right? And definitely he was a veterinary surgeon. So another a point that you can take up for the character sketch of the narrator. Right. So this is how you need to analyze the questions very carefully, read it very carefully, take points, and then you could mold the answer for some other answer which is relatable. So many answers, actually there are not more answers. There are, I think, 10 to 12 answers that you need to prepare from this question, this chapter, and the other answers, other questions will be related more or less to these questions, right? You definitely need to understand and go through the question very carefully to understand what is asked from you, right? So yes, what are the points that could come up in this question could also be the point which you could include in the question which is related to the character sketch of the narrator. So try writing a character sketch of the narrator based on these points. Definitely I'm going to show you I'm going to teach you what are the points you are going to incorporate in the character sketch in our next session. But before that, I want all of you to write this answer on character sketch of the narrator, and then you could match with the points which I'm going to show you in the next session, right? So I think the narrator, a veterinary surgeon, is a very tactful person. Now you have to tell how, you have to justify. You cannot just write a tactful person. How is he a tactful person? Because he knows how to deal with people. He adjusts himself well to the circumstances. Then he immediately understands Tricky's problem. When he saw Tricky in the first glance, he could understand that he has become, obese because of being overfed by Mrs. Pumphrey. So he also tries to, train Mrs. Pumphrey to let Tricky run, to let Tricky exercise, to help him maintain a strict diet. So he gives all these advices to Mrs. Pumphrey, right? So you could say that he was a good veterinary surgeon and he was a good doctor who was very careful about maintaining Tricky's proper health, who cared about Tricky, right? And Tricky doesn't suffer any sort of illness. He could very well understand that. What was his main illness? That was overfeeding. So therefore he determines that I am going to take this dog out of that house. He tactfully, tries to say Mrs. Pumphrey that this dog cannot be kept here. We need to treat him to the hospital, bring him to the hospital, so as to remove Tricky from that area where, Mrs. Pumphrey completely forgets to maintain a strict diet, and she's very lenient. She doesn't take any strict action and keeps on overfeeding him, making him obese, right? So he was bent on taking the dog away. So very tactfully he had to deal with Mrs. Pumphrey, right? So next is the dog gets well under his supervision and natural environment of surgery. So therefore here you have to mention how does he treat Tricky naturally. First of all, he gives him 2 days of water diet. Then gradually he lets him play with the other dogs and he sees him running towards his bowl, and that leads to the speedy recovery of the dog. So this is how you need to elaborate on each point that I have mentioned based on instances from your textbook. Next, he knows how to deal with Mrs. Pumphrey. So various instances you have to give from your textbook that what tells you that he knows very well how to deal with Mrs. Pumphrey. One is he brushes aside all her irrelevant question and provides only the relevant answer. So Mrs. Pumphrey continuously makes phone calls to this narrator, but he only gives the information which are relevant. And then she keeps on sending irrelevant objects, irrelevant food items as well, like eggs, wine, brandy, right? But he was very tactful in dealing with that situation as well, so you need to say that as well. And then while he went to take Tricky away from Mrs. Pumphrey, what was the reaction that Mrs. Pumphrey did? She started throwing all her coats. She wanted everything to, that the narrator should take all the belongings of Tricky to the hospital. So how well he managed that situation, even that you need to write. So these are the instances that you need to justify, like that you need to say, write in your answers, which will justify that he was a very tactful person when it came to, dealing with persons like Mrs. Pumphrey. Now, the next question that you have is, do you think Tricky was happy to go home? What do you think will happen now? Okay, so this is again an open-ended question. You could say, yes, so we can say that Tricky was happy to go home. But the second part of the question is, what do you think will happen now? So that is dependent on your viewpoint. What do you think? You can come up with a completely different answer, right? So yes, Tricky was happy to go home, but Tricky was at the same time happy at the surgery. That we have already seen. When the doctor was brought into the surgery, he was very ill, but he was cured in 2 days. How? Without any medication. The proper diet and regular exercise helped a lot in its speedy recovery. So he was treated naturally without giving him any kind of surgical treatment. He was treated naturally just by reducing his diet, just by totally restricting his diet, removing all his diet except for water diet for 2 days, and then slowly and gradually he started gaining the lost appetite that he started gaining the appetite that he had lost. And regular exercise along with proper diet actually helped in his speedy recovery. The dog regained its best health and was no longer listless. So this is the end of the first part. And now the second part comes. What do you think? Will the same thing happen again? So I think that again the pampering will start, and Mrs. Pumphrey, now that Tricky had been severely ill, now she thinks that he requires more energy, right? So he was actually the sole lovable creature in the entire house, like ladla kind of a person, ladla kind of a dog in the house. So definitely he was very much pampered, very much loved by the entire house, especially Mrs. Pumphrey, who had no one else to shower love on, right? So Pumphrey had only her dog. So definitely that was one of the reasons why she pampered him so much. But yes, we should again remember that excess of anything is extremely harmful. So this is evident from the fact, like how she will start her pampering again. That is evident how that she started already sending eggs, wine and brandy immediately after hearing about his recovery. So as soon as she heard that Tricky had started taking his meals again and he's recovering, so she thought that now he needs more energy in order to recover fast, and again she started sending eggs, wine and brandy. So from here we could very well apprehend what is the next step that she's going to take when actually she takes back Tricky home. Next is, do you think this is a real life episode or a mere fiction, or is it a mixture of both? So personally, I think that it could be a mixture of both. Mrs. Pumphrey, she's a rich lady, and we actually see many such rich ladies in our society who are lonely and they have just one pet, and they kind of pamper and shower all their love on that single pet, right? Or maybe more than one pet, right? So because of her over pampering and overfeeding, what happens is Tricky becomes ill. But she did not have the intention to make her ill. She had good intention in her mind, but she was ignorant of the fact that if she excessively feeds him, that would not lead him to becoming very healthy, but on the contrary, he will become what? He will become obese and unhealthy. So this episode can be treated as a fiction for those who do not take it seriously, but actually for us, the readers, it's a kind of warning. The author is trying to warn us about the fact that excess of everything is harmful, right? So there are parents as well, like Mrs. Pumphrey, who actually take excessive care of their child, right? But yes, we should remember that even though we have love for our children or even our pets, but we should be in a limit, right? Love does not mean over pampering. There is a fine line between love and over pampering. Over pampering creates what? It leads to wrong direction. The child becomes over pampered, and in case of parents, the child, if he's over pampered and whatever he thinks, whatever he does, he is given indulgence to it, right? If he even does wrong things, the parents say, okay, let it be. So they try to give indulgence because they think that they are pampering, they are loving their child. So they do not scold them, they do not take care to be strict with them and to teach them that this is right and this is wrong. So if something is wrong, you should not do this, right? So that is why the children often take a wrong direction and lead to a wrong path, right? So that over excessive pampering is, it's wrong. It leads to harm both in the case of pets as well as in case of humans. So this episode describes the silly behavior of a rich woman who is foolishly indulgent, perhaps because she is lonely. Do you think such people are merely silly, or can their actions cause harm to others? Very important question. So yes, she does. She actually acts very foolishly when it comes to taking care of a pet dog. She not only shows her love for the pet dog, but she tries to overfeed Tricky, right? She does not restrict her diet. Tricky was very greedy. He needed all these. He demanded all the items, different items like snacks in between, biscuits, chocolates, etc. But this lady, she was very, she was not strict enough to maintain Tricky's proper diet, right? So this may be because of her loneliness. She had no other person to share her love with. So all her extra love, the share of love which she could have shared with any other person or the other persons, all of them goes to Tricky, and Tricky becomes obese, right? So but she is completely ignorant that about the harm that this action can cause, right? They show their excessive love, affection for someone without knowing the consequence. So she also cannot understand, fails to understand completely that she is wrong in over pampering her dog with these extra items, right? And she also refuses to listen to the veterinary surgeon's advice. She also does not provide exercise to Tricky, and she does not cut down on the diet that like the advice, all the advices that the narrator had given. So she does not follow all these advices. So there is no doubt that although her intentions were good, but she is not aware that her action could cause harm to others, right? So her overfeeding actually caused harm to the poor dog, who was not able to move, who had lost his appetite, who had bouts of vomiting, right? So she was not aware of this fact. Okay, next is, do you think that there are parents like Mrs. Pumphrey? Yes, we have already discussed that there could be parents who are extremely possessive about their kids, right? Their sense of overindulgence can go in either way. Now, there are two types of parents that we see in our, society. First is the parents who lead to their child being spoiled brats, right? How? By meeting their demands, each and every demand, right? So that would overindulge the child, and he would keep on demanding, thinking that, okay, I have my parents, they are going to take care of everything, right? So they will not take their own effort. So that causes harm for the child, because a child cannot remain, completely independent on their parents, completely dependent on their parents every time or forever, right? He needs to learn on his own. So when the parents are spoiling the child, when they are meeting all the demands set forth by the children, right? But we also have other examples of parents who are putting unnecessary pressure on the child to follow a particular behavior pattern. So both the extremes are harmful. You should not follow any extreme. You should follow a middle path. Neither you should be completely overindulgent, saying that, okay, you can do whatever you like. It's totally your wish, which again leads to a very difficult situation for the child, because he goes in the wrong direction. He may lead to the wrong path, right? But again, some parents are over strict, trying to control all the actions of a child, which restricts the freedom of a child. So that also should not be the case, right? So how does the narrator treat Tricky? This is very important, okay? This answer can also be counted when you write about the justification of the title. Basically, when you are justifying the title, the entire process of Tricky's treatment will be incorporated in that, right? So yes, first of all, Tricky. So when you are doing this answer, you are actually doing two answers simultaneously. This answer plus a part of the answer for the justification of the title. You just need to mold your answer according to the introduction. Like, you just need to mold the introductory part of your answer of justification of the title. The rest, the body will remain the same, right? So the doctor gave Tricky no food but plenty of water for 2 days. So he kept him on a water diet. Slowly, the dog started showing interest in the surroundings and began to mix with the other dogs at the surgery. So though he was a well-kept dog, but he was easily gelling with the other dogs who were not so, well-bred like Tricky, who were unkempt. But that did not matter. He was not the odd man out in the hospital, right? He mingled well with all the other dogs. On the third day, Tricky started, licking the supper bowls of other dogs. So then, after that, a separate bowl was kept, and the doctor was pleased to note that Tricky started running. So he had gained his appetite, and that is why he started running to eat his food with enthusiasm. From that day onwards, his progress started, improving. His progress was rapid. Speedy recovery started. It did not require any sort of medical treatment, but he recovered at the end quite well, without any surgery. The natural process of his treatment. So here you could see that the narrator was an efficient veterinary surgeon who treated Tricky without any artificial surgery, just naturally, right? So this can also come in the character sketch of the narrator, right, who was an efficient veterinary surgeon. So you could justify how efficient was he by answering the way he treated Tricky. So that is how, if you could answer this question, you could answer 3 questions together, right? And the final question for today is, explain the significance of the title A Triumph of Surgery, right? So first of all, I told you initially that you need to, Triumph of Surgery, basically you need to explain the whole story, and the major part of the story is the treatment of Tricky, which we have already done in the previous answer. So 50% of your answer is done, right? And now you just need to mold your introductory part of the answer. So when you read the question, read the title of the story, Triumph of Surgery, immediately in your mind, what appears is curiosity regarding what kind of surgery is the chapter talking about and how was it triumphant, right? So you need to, begin your answer with this. And then you need to say, how was the dog cured without the dose of medicine? Mr. Herriot, how did he manage to change the dog from a lazy, inactive and fat dog to a fit and active dog, a muscular dog, right? So seeing the dog after a fortnight, what did Mrs. Pumphrey do? She was very happy, and after knowing that Mr. Herriot did it without any medical treatment, she named it as a triumph of surgery, and therein comes your title, right? So the ending of the chapter is where the name of the title comes up, right? So that leads to the significance of the title, and we can very well conclude that this title is completely justified and completely appropriate. So guys, that was all from my end. Now it is your turn. Please do comment in the comment section answering this question. What would you have done if you were a member of the staff in Mrs. Pumphrey's household, a neighbor? What would your life have been in general? This is from your text. So please do answer the two questions. I would love to read all the answers or the innovative answers that you come up with at the end of the text, right? So yes, if you have liked this video, please do hit the like button. Please keep sharing your love, and don't forget to comment on how you enjoyed today's session, and did you like the pictures that I showed to you, and do you relate it with your own pets at home, right? Thank you so much, and we will meet up in our next session. Till then, take care and bye-bye.